Good evening, everybody, and thanks for joining us here tonight at Community Workshop number 3 as part of our City of Huntington Beach Parks and Recreation Master Plan update. My name is Chris Lama. I'm the Director of Community and Library Services, joined here again tonight with our Deputy Director, Ashley Wysocki.
Hello.
And from RJM Design Group, Zachary Meeting.
Hello.
So thank you all again. I'm glad you're able to join us here tonight as we're actually getting ready to wrap up the community input process of the master plan update. So that said, I always like to give a quick review in case there's anybody new on the line that hasn't joined us yet. But the purpose of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan in general is to really help us guide us with an implementation tool for the management and development of our parks and our programming here in Huntington Beach. And obviously a huge part of that is reaching out to the community and identifying what your needs are out in the community and throughout the city, as well as our stakeholders and people that participated. They're out using our parks and participating in our programs, and then ultimately offer recommendations to support local Huntington Beach community. So that said, I'm going to hand it over to Zachary here, and he's going to talk a little bit about what we've seen. And just as a reminder, as with all the other workshops, is if you do have some questions throughout the evening, throughout this workshop, just use the chat function via Zoom. And towards the end of the workshop, we'll address and discuss some of those questions that are asked. So thank you. And Zachary, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. And if you're seeing this workshop as a recording, you can also go to the project website. The feedback button will still be live through the rest of the year till as we finalize the project. So even if this is a recording that you're viewing, you can still log on and send questions in through the feedback, and we'll make sure to address those as we go through the remainder of the project. Chris, you're right. This is the conclusion of the community outreach portion where we've collected all the data. Tonight, we're going to share back everything we've heard with the community as we go through this, how we're going to tackle the next steps, how we weave it all together from each one of these workshops, from the multimodal survey all the way through the workshop components themselves and the online surveys. So what is a 5-step process? We've completed the inventory of existing conditions and resources. The extensive community outreach concludes tonight. And then we move into the needs analysis phase, which will ultimately develop the recommendations. And then we'll look at some funding and implementation sections of the report. Now, here we are on our timeline. We're getting close to the end of the year. So we're completing all the community workshops at this point. The community outreach will conclude. And then we're going to move into the reporting phase, where we go back and we look at everything we've heard and we say, okay, how does this apply to the opportunities that might exist within the existing landscape that we've seen, within the existing programming that we've seen, and how can we weave that back into the fabric of the city as we move forward over the next 5, 10, 15 years into the future. Now, I want to take a moment and just kind of look back at how many times we've heard different things, and look at the outreach summary that we have here. We've had a significant amount of involvement on this process. You know, if I look at them from the last time we did this in 2016, we had around 350 people, which is a good amount of participants throughout the process. This process that we did, because of all the online information that we did, because we held a workshop that is now 24/7 capable of being on people's cell phones, being able to watch the videos again through the recording, the project website, we've had over 780 participants through the project, giving us information, giving us feedback surveys. And that's not just the views. Adding in the views completely goes into it more. So we've more than doubled the participation from last time just by the new methods that we're implementing, which is really tremendous. We're getting a great cross-section of the community as we move through the report. Now, I want to go through tonight just the feedback, the elements that we've heard. One of the things we did was we had stakeholder surveys, as well as community workshops and the feedback button on the website. So the feedback button is still live. If you want, you can go there now and you can provide feedback. You can do that for the next couple months as we wrap up the report. But to date, what we've heard on the feedback button is we've had 43 submittals. We've heard several different things from park-specific recommendations, including Newland Park, Edison Park, Harbor View Park, Central Park, Bartlett Park, the Central Library, Harriet Wider, Murdy Park, Carr Park, Rogers, Shipley, the Shore Trails, Greer Park, as well as even the Santa Ana River Trail. We've heard a lot of specific park request mentions in this, and everything's open on the feedback. You can ask about anything, whether it be city-specific, county-specific, or even neighboring communities, and we look at that information. We've heard a lot of amenities such as bocce courts, pickleball courts, soccer fields, pathways and trails, pools, playgrounds, natural areas, picnicking, workout equipment, and lighting, all through the feedback submittals. That was an additional tool that we implemented this time, as opposed to the last time when we did this, is allowing people to comment at any point in time during the process. We've collected a lot of great feedback. The other element that we've done is we went through and we had stakeholder interviews. And when we did our stakeholder interviews, we went through and we asked a series of questions. And what we heard from our stakeholders was some similar stuff, is looking at safe parks, making sure that parks are safe, from upgrading facilities, as well as modernizing some of those amenities within the parks themselves, making sure that there's affordable and engaging programs for the community, that there's active senior programs and fitness elements. There are skateboarding. We've heard a lot of skateboarding comments through the stakeholder surveys, as well as the issue with homelessness and some of the problems that we're seeing in some of the parks and community areas. We also heard that in some of the other events as well too. We also heard comments on park and communications, the internet, having internet accessible facilities in our parks, as well as having a dialogue. There was a lot of conversation in some of our stakeholder interviews about a dialogue with the community. How do we go out to the community? How do we receive comments from them? And I think some of this process might even be able to be replicated down the road as we look at just how we reach out to the community, how often we do it, through what mediums we do it. And we see a great success here of reaching out in the digital media, the digital space, if you will, to where the community can actually participate. So there's a lot of comments on that. We also heard elements of such as the aquatics components too in our stakeholder interviews. The other element that we started our workshop series with our virtual town halls. And some of the items that we had this first workshop here, we had over 124 online surveys completed and 14 paper surveys for a total of 138. And you can see one of the things I look at here is on your screen, you can see where everybody is coming from in terms of those surveys. I look to make sure we're getting a good representation across the entire community. So when we hear certain comments, certain elements, whether it be skateboarding or aquatics, I can see where those comments are coming from. And this really is important as we move into the needs analysis reporting period. I look at those comments on a geographic basis. So that way I look at the amenities and the areas around those comments for specific opportunities. So that way we get good surgical recommendations as we look to the community needs. It's not just the citywide, but we look at the sub-demographics, the sub-regional areas. We look at the neighborhood parks themselves based on the community's responses. That gives us a lot more tailored specific recommendations. And I want to share some of those elements tonight. At this first workshop, we asked three big questions. What are the most important community characteristics that make the city of Huntington Beach a great place to live, work, and play? And you can see here the word cloud that we're showing is a representation of all the data that we collected. We heard a lot of elements such as the parks are one of the greatest community characteristics here. Huntington Beach has a lot of parks across the community, well distributed too. A lot of the open space, not just having a park, turf, and trees, but having open space and areas accessible to access nature and relax. Safe communities. The beach is a big draw here. It's clean, and there's a big feeling of community togetherness within the community here that make Huntington Beach a great place to live, work, and play. Another question we asked them that night was, what are some issues or trends that might be negatively impacting that? We heard homelessness, crime, maintenance of some of the facilities, maintenance of the playground equipment. We also heard trash and unsafe elements could be negatively impacting those great community characteristics. Ultimately, we asked the question of what can Community and Library Services Department play in addressing those issues and support the great community characteristics. And we heard very clearly from the respondents here is address the homelessness issues, working through programs, working to help the individuals, help combat the problem and move through that, as well as improve maintenance in terms of the facilities, maintenance in terms of the playgrounds. We got a lot of specific mentions on that, as well as improving the parks overall. We also got a number of comments such as creating community through programs and people, but also through partnerships with various elements, whether it be public or private or school districts throughout the community, making sure the partnerships exist as we move forward. The second workshop we held online was conducted in the same manner, where we could look at the number of distribution here as well. We had 214 surveys submitted on this one, and we had 13 paper surveys. And with this workshop, we did something a little different. We actually shared back some information, and we asked people to vote on what their top programs and facilities were. And you can see there is a long list here of programs and facilities. Now, this is important. I want to point out not the highest items right now, but I want to point out some of the smaller items on the right-hand side. There is no voices left behind. As we go through this, we collect everything. And without knowing what's going to come up as the common thread or the highest element, I collect all the information. So here we have on some of these important facilities and recreation amenities that were listed. We actually have elements such as reduced turf, promote native plant material, water bottle filling stations, wind barriers on courts. Those are still in some of the elements that we've heard. They didn't come to the top of the list, but they're still taken into account. Because as we move through this, there might be opportunities as we go on to combine different elements, combine different programs as we improve facilities to pick up some of those minor comments that we have in here too. So let me zoom in now and look at some of the top facilities here. You can see when in workshop 2, some of the results were walking, hiking, biking being some of the top elements, pickleball courts, walkways, access to nature, maintenance, cleaning up the equipment. There's those common threads again. As we go through a lot of this data, we'll hear those common threads that come up over and over and over. Beach amenities, aquatics, pool, restroom, finish the bluffs, new fencing, as well as soccer fields, potential synthetic fields. We asked the same question in terms of what are the most important programs the community would like to see within Huntington Beach. And same process here, where we look at all of the data from the most common response all the way down to the very minor responses to make sure we address everything. And some of those responses that didn't work their way to the very top of the list, they include items such as STEM programs, volunteer programs, or esports. Doesn't mean they fall off the list. It doesn't mean they don't make it into the overall new master plan update. It just means that they're not going to be listed on the first top categories, but they're still included. So as the city moves forward to developing new programs, as there are opportunities to weave in some of these other elements, such as the STEM programs or even volunteer opportunities, which we've heard a lot about on different volunteer components, those can be woven into the programs too in the future. So we take note of everything that goes through it. Some of the top program mentions now to point out were pickleball classes, the worn out playgrounds, changing up and replacing the equipment. Again, there's that common thread. We start to hear these things over and over again. The homeless program, youth sports activities, teens, the major reforestation efforts in Central Park, senior programs, the exercise equipment, beach programs, and affordable and engaging programs. So a lot of dynamic different programs there, which could come into play as some of those smaller elements. Affordable and engaging programs is a wide element to start to work within and develop different components. The other last element we looked at was a multimodal survey. And we went out to the community through various methods, through telephone, text, cell phones, and collected data, statistically valid data. Again, we look at the geographic distribution, quite a good distribution across the entire community. And that's another thing we note. So we combine all the geographic data at the end, and we go through all of the responses together and just sharing a couple of those responses as we move through tonight, looking at where they come from. Where are we getting this information? You can see here, 77% of the respondents on this got their information from online and the city website or via Google searches. That's an indicator of probably why we did so well this time in collecting community input. We're really starting to identify where the market base is, where they're searching. We went and promoted information there, so they took part on the surveys as well as the website. Elements that we also asked throughout the survey was looking at what people felt was the most important benefit of parks and recreation. You can see here, 75% felt that fitness was the most important benefit of parks and recreation and leisure activities. We also heard elements such as opportunities to gather, as well as learning opportunities for hobbies, self-improvement, and opportunities to give back to the community through volunteer work. Again, some of those common threads throughout each one of these responses, each one of these tools we utilize to go out to the community. We found out through the survey that the community utilizes parks and recreation very heavily, with 92% use parks and recreation facilities at least monthly. You see a substantial portion, 40%, use it more than once a week. So a lot of the community is out in the parks all the time. Then we asked what were some of the highest used facilities that they went to in this. And what we found here is, yes, the beach, the pier, and Dog Beach and Huntington Beach Central Park are some of the largest utilized facilities, but I look at all the other data as well. What I see here is we've got a great cross-section of people using all of the other parks too in this respondent list. So it's not one or two or three key parks where people are responding there, giving us information on, but it's parks all across the community, which is really critical when we want to get good data for all of the various elements. Now, here's something that came up too, and this is what was something that we pointed out in a couple of videos or a couple of sessions ago. We asked the same question in 2016, and we found that in 2016, the community satisfaction or the participant satisfaction at the time was around 93% with the maintenance of the existing parks and recreation facilities. We see that coming down to 60% now in this one. But when we look back at those common threads, the data that we've earned, the playgrounds, the playground maintenance, some of those facility improvements, we start to see that the bluff top railings. And I know some of those projects are going on right now.
Absolutely. And in 2019, our city council approved a playground equipment priority replacement list. And so we've been working over the past few years and integrating into our budget every year, at least a few brand new playgrounds. Hopefully some of you have experienced those, but yeah, very excited to see some of the projects referenced here already in progress.
And absolutely. And I think that's going to reflect too, as we move on, and we'll see that number come back up, because this, once you have something that's been out in the park for 5 years and the climate that we have here gets into it with all the salt and the components, 5 years down the road, it's now 15 years, and it really starts to eat away at it. So that's might be why we've seen some of that hiccup there, but it's already being addressed, which is the nice thing as we move through this. The last few elements that I want to share with you tonight is really, how do we combine it all together? How do we weave this common thread element and find out what are the top facility and program needs? We take those three elements, the small group interviews, the stakeholder interviews, the public community workshops, the feedback comments, as well as the statistical valid data and the surveys. We combine them all together and we see how many times we heard that element come up, which gives rise to that common thread. But we also listen to everything else too, so no voice is left behind. Everything's identified on the left-hand side of this chart. And I'm gonna kind of skip to a screen here where the elements that came up the most are identified as those top elements, such as affordable programs, beach programs, concert events, exercise and fitness classes, homeless programs, pickleball classes, and senior programs were elements that came up in this effort through all the community outreach. And some of those were actually in the 2016 master plan too, such as the community events. So the community is very in tune with what events are going on and making sure that those continue to be developed as one of the highest rated programs that people liked a lot here. They want to see that continue in Huntington Beach. The other element are the facilities. When we look at the facilities, we did that same analysis. We take all the small group interviews, the executive stakeholder interviews, we combine them with the community workshops, as well as the statistically valid data. And we go through this and we get another chart here where it's just facility based. And we can see some of the highest mentions on this one were beach amenities, maintenance upkeep, open space, nature, playground renovations. Again, there's that common thread. We heard that a lot through this presentation. Then the pickleball courts, restrooms, skate park, skateboard area, soccer fields, swimming pool, trails for biking and walking, as well as urban forest, trees, native plants, and then walkways and parks. And a few of those were actually in the last master plan, but what we're seeing this time, as things evolve, as you start to provide different facilities or updated facilities for the community, the concept of what people are looking for also ebbs and flows. Trends change over time. We went through a global pandemic. Everybody's much more aware of the recreation facilities in the community now too. So we're seeing not necessarily a shift, but an evolution of what people are looking for. And this is really important data. So where we go from here is we're going to look through all of the information we've collected when we perform a needs analysis. I break down all of the geospatial data and we look at all the opportunities across the city to develop specific recommendations. And then we do our report writing over the next few months. Now, this doesn't mean it ends today. Nobody can provide us any more comments. By all means, you can. One of the unique things about this process is we will continue to receive comments and accept comments for the next few months as we finalize the report. So that feedback button is still live on the website. And I want to make sure we promote it so that way everybody has an opportunity. If you are seeing a recording of this video tonight and didn't get to ask a live question, you can ask the question through the feedback comments, and we'll make sure we address it in one of the project updates. As well as here is the website link. Our final steps will be to actually go to a commission and a council meeting here towards the end of the year is our projected dates, wrapping up the reporting period, and then we'll have some final presentations then. But it is a little sad. It concludes the public outreach process. I have had a lot of fun going through, reading everybody's comments. There's been a lot of great comments. A lot of people who have lived here for several generations, families who have grown up in this community, been here for 50+ years, and they're really passionate about it. And you can see that in the community, and it's really great to get the feedback. So with that, I want to thank everybody very much for their time. I think we have some time for some Q&A if there are questions.
There hasn't been any yet, but if you're interested in asking a question, down at the bottom of your screen, you can use the Q&A tab and type in your questions, and we're available to answer anything you might be curious about.
Wonderful. There was something I wanted to ask about as we look through the data. I mean, we've talked a lot about the park improvements, the playground improvements, and those elements. Were there any other things that the city is currently actively looking at doing as part of that playground improvement plan? Are there future projects that are coming up based on those results?
You know, aside from the playgrounds, Zachary, we're looking really heavily at our larger community parks. As you know, we're working together on another project with redeveloping a conceptual plan for the Edison Community Park. The next one after that's going to be large is on the other end of town at the at Marina Community Park up at Graham and Edinger. Aside from that, and seeing a lot of the the walkways and the bike paths and things, we work very closely with our public works department, who's working on their own mobility study and doing some community outreach there to see what the needs are and what we can do to collaborate to meet some of those needs. It's all very exciting conversations. Fun.
Wonderful. And it's exciting to see the stuff moving forward. Even as you're collecting the data now, you see some of the community desires, and you're already maneuvering to make sure that you keep up with the community. And that's the exciting part of it. This report, the next few months, was really the formality to finalize the documents and deliver it. But it's nice to see that there's already a development, that things are moving forward, and the community sees that. So it's really exciting. With that, though, I would like to thank everybody very much for their time and for joining us tonight. We look forward to seeing everybody in the future, hopefully at the Commissioner Council meeting.
Yes, and that said, please stay tuned on the website for those dates coming up for our Community Service Commission meeting, and in which case we'll go over the final draft report in detail, go over that in a session with Commission, and then ultimately, again, as Zachary mentioned, off to City Council, most likely by the end of this calendar year, but stay tuned for dates on the website. And I'd like to thank you all too. It's been very exciting, and looking forward to see the final product and what comes in the coming years with Parks and Recreation here in Huntington Beach.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.